typically when there's new ideas and innovation and trends, that's going to be the biggest driving factor for what's going to be built out. But not all companies have a product owner to prioritize and
Okay.
build it out the right way and put it on a roadmap. Most companies are going that route just because it keeps things organized, but it just really depends on the industry that you're in. Like I said, you could be in tech or you could be in fintech, or there's so many different ways that you can be a product owner.
Joining me today is Paige Swammy. She is a product owner at QT Software in the Houston, Texas area. So, Paige, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Hello. Thanks for having
Hi,
me.
of course. So, let's go ahead and get started. Paige, can you explain to me in the most simplest way that you can what exactly is a product owner and what does one do?
Yes. So a product owner is essentially the owner of the backlog for any engineering work that a company has. So
Okay.
they're essentially the why something needs to be developed or innovated. And then the engineering team is responsible for the how.
Okay. Amazing. And so now, what made you want to get into this career path? How did you get your start in it?
Yeah, so I always say I oopsied into it because I haven't always been a product owner, obviously, but I have
Okay.
been at the company I'm at for almost 4 years now.
Okay.
And I worked with a lot of product owners in previous roles. And so I think an opportunity showed up. I went for it and it just happened to be mine. And now I'm here and I absolutely love it. And I think being in the technology space certainly helped a lot.
Okay. That's amazing. So now, what parts of your job are the most exciting or the most interesting to you?
I think really just getting to talk to everyone under the sun, it feels like. It's a very, I don't know, open role where you have to talk to a bunch of different people, like customers,
Okay,
stakeholders, and other internal teams. So there's a lot of cross communication and collaboration. And I think that's so much fun because you get to know so many different people.
that's amazing. So now, on the flip side, what parts of the job are harder, emotionally challenging, or maybe boring, just not so fun?
So on the flip side of that, because you're building so many relationships, sometimes expectations aren't met or you have to have hard
Okay,
conversations about expectations. And so you
okay,
don't ever want to let people down, but you have to be realistic about priorities and timelines and things like that. So that can be very stressful. I wouldn't say anything's ever boring. Every day is certainly different. So I think that's a plus.
yeah. How do you manage that?
Um, I would say it's just taking it day by day. Every day's
Yeah,
different.
yeah,
No day is going to be the same, and I just tell myself that. So whatever happened yesterday that I didn't like, it's probably not going to happen the next day.
yeah. That's amazing. So now, what do you think that people underestimate or overestimate about being a product owner?
I think people definitely overestimate product owners to be very technical because they are in a very technical space. But
Okay,
that's a good and bad thing. I think a lot of product owners come from previous engineering roles. There isn't like a
okay,
linear way to become a product owner, but that's certainly something that a lot of product owners have is technical experience. And if they
okay,
don't have technical experience and they have a lot of business acumen and that relationship building piece.
okay. And now, what are some niches or maybe specialties that are within product owning, I guess? What are what are some places that you can specialize in if there are any?
I wouldn't say there are any because you don't
Okay,
really know what product you're going to own until you're in the role. So a
okay,
company could be hiring for a product owner because they're trying to build out this new innovation. And the best example I can give is let's say someone is building out Instagram for the first time. They have this cool idea for Instagram. So they launched
yeah,
Instagram. Cool, that went well. Now they want to introduce stories. And so they
okay,
might hire a product owner to drive the building of stories and they need someone to
okay,
prioritize that work, but you wouldn't
okay,
know as someone like a candidate that you're going to be building out stories until you're actually
yeah,
there. So
yeah,
there really isn't one.
okay, yeah. So it's a very broad, just kind of out there, broad type of role. Yeah. So now, who are some of the biggest employers in this industry? Basically, also, who looks for product owners?
So I would say the biggest employer of product owners will be tech companies, but that's not the only employer. I can think of an example of HEB, right? HEB has a
Okay,
storefront that's going to be their main. They're not a tech company, but they do have an app. So they probably would
okay,
need a product owner to drive building out new features of that app. So it could
Okay.
really be anyone, especially if that company is very product driven. And that just means that they really leverage product owners to get feedback from end users to build out what they're asking for.
Okay. Amazing. And now, from my research on Google, it says that the average income for a product owner is about $104,000. From your experience, what do you think about that number?
That's definitely accurate, and depending
Okay.
on the size of the company, I think that that's why that's the average, but you're more than likely to be a pretty high earner considering that you're going to be interacting with engineering and really being the voice of end users of whatever technology that you're building out.
Okay. And so now, what are some current trends or challenges in this industry, and how do you see the industry changing in about 5 to 10 years?
I have seen a really big growth in product owner roles on LinkedIn. I'm always on
Okay.
LinkedIn just because I don't know, it's a cool social media sometimes. And I've seen an increase in product owner jobs. And I don't know if that's because that's now what my algorithm's feeding me, or if
Okay.
now companies are really driving towards being a product driven company. My boss actually taught me what that means. Typically, when there's new ideas and innovation and trends, that's going to be the biggest driving factor for what's going to be built out. But not all companies have a product owner to prioritize and
Okay.
build it out the right way and put it on a roadmap so that things are released in a timely manner, but also where the
Okay.
engineers aren't overwhelmed with just like a never ending list of work to do. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what the product owner does. I like to compare it to maybe like a project manager, but
Okay.
it's a little bit different because you're responsible for the backlog of work that the engineers have so that they're not overwhelmed, and then you're leading them
Okay.
and kind of being their cheerleader while also
Okay.
listening to what the end users or clients want. So,
Okay.
I would say most companies are going that route just because it keeps things organized. But it just really depends on the industry that you're in. Like I said, you could be in tech or you could be in fintech, or there's so many different ways that you can be a product owner.
Okay. So now, kind of just out of curiosity, I'm not sure if this is the most valid question, but how many product owners are there per project or product?
Sure, it really depends on the company. So,
Okay.
the
Okay.
company I'm at, I work at a digital banking company. So,
Okay.
there's a product owner for what would be the software that the banks would actually use to manage you as the user that uses the app, and then there's a
Okay.
product which is the actual app itself, but then there's also these sub products because that one product owner would be overwhelmed with you can imagine all the things you can do in your
Yeah.
banking app, right?
Yeah.
So, but then for a smaller company, they might only need one product owner
Okay.
because I don't know. I like to
Yeah.
compare to things that everyone knows, like HEB. I can imagine there's maybe like 5 features on there. So that would be like 5 product owners if that's the route they want to
Okay.
go.
Okay.
So the ideally you own only one product because you can
Okay.
really do a lot and plan it out well. But some companies have you own more than one, and that's not bad, but it just makes things a little bit more challenging.
Okay. Now, is there like an end point as a product owner? Like once the product is completed, or is that just not really a thing? Like is completion or perfection never reached?
Yeah, there is and there isn't. So you can
Okay.
have an idea or a feature that you want released. And so you work hard to plan out that release. So you have the work, you give it to the engineers and you scope it out, you put it on the roadmap, and then you
Okay.
get to a release date. Well, there's testing and all that that goes in, but I'm simplifying it. So
Yeah.
it gets released, but then you're always getting feedback from your customers and about what they
Okay.
want to see in their product.
Okay.
And then you just go from there. So you get a
Okay.
release, but by the time you get to a release of that, then you're probably working on the next one. So yes and no, but I would
Okay.
say getting a release is really exciting because there's so much work that goes into it. And then the
Yeah.
feedback that you get once it's released from the customers is amazing because they love you and they're like, wow, we've been asking for this for X amount of time. I'm so excited it's
Yeah.
here. So
And how long would you say that that whole process takes from the start to the release date?
yeah, it really just depends, but I would say on
Yeah.
average about a year. So it's
Okay.
it's not like super scary where you're releasing
Yeah.
something every month. Like it's very spaced out, and that's what your job is to do is to be realistic about that.
Okay. Okay. Amazing. So now, how do you stay updated with the developments of your field?
I would say at least in the digital banking space, I try to stay like LinkedIn is a good resource for that because you can
Yeah.
see like what trends are happening in online banking or like what other companies are doing, the competitors, because that's like a big driving factor
Yeah.
too for innovation is like what are the competitors doing?
Yeah.
And then just being in on conversations like the earnings calls with the company and I don't know, listening to like what leadership says because they have a lot of insightful information that will directly impact your job, maybe not tomorrow, but maybe like in a year or so because you're hearing like what's in the pipeline.
Okay. And again, just out of curiosity, how often do you read or look at customer feedback?
So, in a product owner role, you typically have customer calls, and so
Okay.
you that's part of the day-to-day is attending those calls and meetings and check-ins. And it's not in your every day-to-day, but if they have a question about your product, then you join. If they have
Okay.
feedback, then you can join because they have a
Okay.
team that's usually responsible for talking to them on a daily basis. But
Okay.
again, if they have feedback about your specific product, then you can kind of, take that in, decide on a timeline, or just keep the conversation going and set expectations that way.
Okay. Amazing. So now kind of along those same lines, as a product owner, what does your schedule look like? What tasks do you kind of spend the majority of your day doing?
Yes. So I will say meetings, and I know that's like very vague, but most of the meetings are going to be with your engineering team. So having daily stand
Okay.
ups, seeing where everyone's at, checking in. And then we have what's called grooming, where you take the tickets that you create, and the tickets are basically like what the end user wants to see and you
Okay.
look at them with the team and they just think about how they would do it because you're bringing the why. So that's what
Okay.
those meetings are. And then meetings with other internal teams in case like you have an ongoing project together or just getting feedback. My role is a little bit unique in a sense that I own the backend infrastructure. So that
Okay.
touches literally everything. So I don't want to say I'm always in meetings, but there are times where involved in a lot of conversations that I can respond to via email or chat.
Okay.
So it's just a lot of communication really on a daily
Yeah.
basis.
Yeah. That's great. So now would you think or would you say that this job is kind of like a 9 to 5 role, or is it more flexible? Do you have to take some work home sometimes? How does that look like?
So I never have to take work home, thank goodness.
Okay.
And luckily, the org that I'm in is very flexible. Like, yes, your standard hours are 9 to 5. I will put that I'm available for meetings on my calendar between
Okay.
the hours of 9 and 5. But
Okay.
like, if I block my calendar and I take a break for a couple hours, like that's fine because I can come back to it. Or if I need to go review some work, it doesn't have to be in those hours, nor
Okay.
I can really just. It's pretty flexible as long as I keep my calendar up to date.
Yeah. Yeah. And would you say that maybe not in your role, but in other product owning roles, would you say that it could be a remote or hybrid role?
Absolutely. I think any
Okay.
product owner can be remote depending on the org. Luckily, my org is mostly remote, but we do have
Oh, good.
on sites. My company's based out of Austin, so I'm remote, but like my boss likes to have on sites where she gets us all together and collaborate, which is really fun. I
Okay.
do enjoy
Yeah.
that. But as far as generally, like most software engineers are remote anyway, so product owners are probably going to be remote too.
Okay. Great. Are there any busy seasons in this job? And if so, what are they?
Yes. So I would say the busiest season, at least for us, is leading up to conference. So we have this conference called Connect every summer
Okay.
where we showcase all of our innovation, what's coming up, or like what we've worked so hard on in the last year, and really just like get excited about the coming years and get feedback and just really meet with our
Yeah.
clients. So leading up to that is chaos just because everyone really wants all their new shiny things out ready to present
Right.
at the
Right.
conference. But other than that, it's pretty steady. But leading up to that, definitely.
Okay. So now to become a product owner, are there certain degrees or qualifications that are required? And if you could maybe explain a little bit about your educational background, that would be great too.
Absolutely. So, to answer the first question, there is not a specific degree you need to be a product owner.
Okay.
Like I said earlier, you could come from any background and become a product owner. And my boss even told me, she's like, I can teach anyone how to be a product owner. But she hired me because I knew digital banking because I'd been at the company for 3 years at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I will say there are certifications if you're interested in going that route and you want to get more experience and understand like what the role truly entails. One is called the Certified Scrum Product Owner by Scrum
Okay.
Alliance. That's the one that I got.
Okay.
and it's really helpful. It's not required, but it definitely helps if you're trying to break into being a product owner. Me
Okay.
personally, I actually graduated with a degree in education and
Okay.
I did not become a traditional teacher, but I did
Okay.
end up being a trainer at the company that I'm at now. And that was my
Okay.
previous role. And so, working with product owners in that way, trying to get documentation to train the company on what we do, what we offer,
Yeah.
um, allowed me to build those relationships. So, I did say earlier that a lot of product owners come from engineering, so they make the swap, but that's not
Yeah.
the only way. The
Okay.
people on my team come from all different types of backgrounds.
Okay. Amazing. So now, what are some natural strengths or talents that someone has to have in order to be a good product owner?
Yes, I will say the biggest one is culture fit in a sense that you have to be able to get along with all types of people and be
Okay.
able to communicate with all types of people and just be
Okay.
naturally outgoing, just because you're in constant communication all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And that's something that's natural because it's not like a heads down and do your work type of job. Sometimes I wish
Yeah.
it was like when I'm really overwhelmed, but that's just not the kind of person I am. It's only cool for like the day for me personally.
So now, what do you end up thinking about all day as a product owner? Kind of what topics or subject matters does someone really have to be interested in to be successful or enjoy this role?
I would say depending on the company you're at, like the best advice I can give is if someone is interested in being a product owner is look up companies that you'd like want to work for and go from there and see if they're hiring for product owners or if they have a product
Okay.
space because you have to be really geeky about like what you're building out. So because I've
Okay.
been in digital banking for almost 4 years, I'm naturally just really knowledgeable about it. And so that's what we talk
Yeah.
about all day is banking, banking, banking because that's what we're
Okay.
building out.
Yeah.
But you don't have to, but you would naturally end up being passionate about the product that you own just because it becomes your baby. So,
Okay. Yeah. So now, what tools, technologies, or softwares do you see that you use a lot as part of your job?
yes, so it'll be your standard Microsoft if you're a Microsoft company or
Okay.
Google, like, you have your chat, your email, but for product owners specifically, depending on the company you're at, you would use Jira, which is going to be where all your engineering tickets live or your backlog
Okay.
lives. You would have some sort of
Okay.
software for the roadmap itself. Going back to Jira, there's other ones like Azure, DevOps, like there's different, backlog management softwares that you'd
Okay.
use, and then you would have a roadmap software, and then depending on the product that you own, you would work with some sort of UX designing software because
Okay.
you would work with design to design up what you're thinking about innovating so that you have some
Yeah.
sort of visual.
Okay. Amazing. So now we want to give our listeners a little bit of advice. So, what do you recommend that candidates that are interested in becoming product owners do to set themselves apart from maybe other candidates?
I do recommend just networking a bunch and messaging people that are product owners. It doesn't necessarily have to be at a company that you want to work at, although that does help. But learning what they do on a daily basis, or if you're at a company that has product owners, sit with them and
Okay.
put something on their calendar if they're open to it and get to know like what
Yeah.
they do on a daily basis and just build relationships because that's really the big part of your role is building relationships. So I think that sets a good precedent for becoming one.
Okay, amazing. So now, if someone wants to make a pivot into this career from another one, what's the first thing that you recommend them do?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, the first thing I recommend them do is if they're already employed somewhere, is see if they have product owners at their company and start there because
Okay.
it's much easier to move internally than externally. Because
Okay.
chances are people already know you or you know someone
Yeah.
that can help you get there.
Yeah.
If not, then I would say, kind of like I said earlier, is going on LinkedIn or networking and getting to know product owners that way, or
Yeah.
even researching specific certifications, although they're a little pricey. I wouldn't go
Okay.
right directly into there, but kinda see, like,
Okay.
what they're teaching in those certs. You can search on Reddit and
Okay.
see, like, what someone learned and kinda study that, and I think that
Okay.
would be helpful.
Yeah. So now going off of the certifications, what are some books, resources, programs, or maybe certifications that you recommend our listeners take a look at?
Yes, so I wouldn't recommend buying one right out the gate, but anything by
Okay.
Scrum Alliance is going to be extremely helpful,
Okay.
especially if your company's agile, which is an entirely different topic, But to stay on topic, you can look up all different types of product owner certifications. And then there's also a subreddit. You don't even have to like be on Reddit like that. There's
Yeah.
a product owner subreddit that is extremely helpful. So I recommend
Okay.
going there too.
So now, what other fields would you say that are kind of similar to being a product owner?
Ooh, so I would say project manager is very similar.
Okay.
The next level up above product owner is product manager. And
Okay.
in a sense, that role is a little bit different. And then I would say some companies have what's called a business analyst, which is would be considered a junior product owner. So those are all very similar. And in the sense that they are going to drive the vision of the customer and then communicate that to engineering, however that looks. Every org and every company is so different. So it's hard to like say
Yeah.
specifically, but that's generally how it works.
Okay. Amazing. So now, if you could talk to your younger self when you were just beginning your career, what would you tell her?
Oh my gosh. I would say you should have networked in college more. You should have been involved in so much more conversations prior to graduation instead of
Mhm.
after, because that would help you so much because you would already have those relationships, whether you want to be a product owner or not. Because truly, I didn't know what I wanted to be. I knew I
Okay.
wanted to be in corporate training. I didn't know like what industry, what anything. And
Yeah.
so I'd also tell myself, like, what you want to do is going to change,
Yeah.
so and that's okay, but as long as you're building relationships to kind of be able to make those moves, that will make all the difference, and that's something I would
Yeah.
extremely stress to myself.
Yeah. That's some great advice for all of us, really. So, yeah, finally, where can people reach out to you or where can they follow along with your work?
Yes, so I would say you can definitely follow me or connect with me on LinkedIn. I think I've said LinkedIn, I don't know, 60 times in this interview. So I think that's the best place to start. I've had people message me where they say, "Hey, I see you work at Q2. I'm interested in this role that's open." They went to A&M. I'm like, Aggie Network's real. I'll go ahead and
Yeah.
refer you. And then they're like, hey, I start next week. And that's
Oh,
super
that's
cool.
amazing. Wow.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you just never know. And
Yeah.
that's just not about me. Just like LinkedIn is such a powerful tool. So
Agreed.
I would just start there with me and then we can go from there.
Yeah, that's amazing. We'll make sure to tag you on this podcast also so that people can find you easier on LinkedIn. But yeah, that's all that we have today. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for sharing all of your insight on what it's like to be a product owner. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me again.
You just got one episode closer to learning about the world of jobs out there. To explore the rest of our career categories and find your best fit, go to jobdictionary.com to sign up for the beta users waitlist. Then subscribe here to find the next episodes coming out this week. And as always, drop us a comment, review, or message to let us know how we can better attune our episodes to your specific needs. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Threads, Pinterest, and wherever else you're on socials to go get our short, snappy preview reels that expose you to new job options every day. Because here at Job Dictionary, we believe your big aha moment can be just one scroll away. Go check it out and get out there. Cheers!